So we're going to continue the 411 and the third question of what do we say? Now we're going to look at a second tool called the three circles. The three circles is not the only gospel tool that's out there, but we have found it to be simple, biblical, and it's reproducing to fourth generation and beyond in a number of contexts and languages. We like to open this up with the question, has anyone ever shared the gospel with you before? This question works with people that you do know, like, hey, John, we've known each other for a while. Has anyone ever shared the gospel with you before? Or people you don't know, a stranger that you meet, like, hi, just had a question. Has anyone ever shared the gospel with you before? So that's a line we like to use. So I'm going to go ahead. We found the best way to train the three circles is just to model and practice it 3 or more times. So I'm going to go ahead and do that now. If you turn on the television or open up your Facebook feed, we see that there's a lot of brokenness in this world, a lot of death, a lot of disease, a lot of suffering. But we also see traces of beauty, like the beauty of a sunset or the laugh of a child, and that's because God's original creation, the way He made it, was not broken. There was no death or disease or suffering. But starting with the very first people, they chose to leave God's perfect design, and that led them into brokenness. And this departure from God's design, going their own way, is called sin. Now, so that's why we're born into brokenness and sin in our world, in our lives. But we don't like to stay in brokenness. We try to get out. So some people might try to escape through climbing the ladder of success, thinking that'll get them out of brokenness. Others try to be religious or just be a good person and help people. Some people try to drown it out with drugs or alcohol or through relationships or even suicide attempts. But none of these attempts to escape the brokenness on our own get us out. They actually snap us back into brokenness. But God loved us so much that He didn't want us to stay in brokenness. And He did for us what we could not do for ourselves. He sent His Son Jesus down into our world and allowed Him to die on a cross, taking on our sin and the punishment for our sin. And 3 days later, He rose from the dead. And He declared that if anyone would be willing to turn from their way and surrender to Jesus and make Him the King of their life, that they would be forgiven of all their sins and would be restored back into God's design. Now, does what I'm saying make sense? Okay. Well, I want to ask you a question. There's two types of people. There's those who are still in brokenness and those who through Jesus have returned to God's design. Which of these two would you say you are today? Okay, you're in brokenness. Well, where do you want to be? Okay, back in God's design. Is there anything today that keeps you from turning from your way and believing in Jesus, that He came and died on the cross and rose from the grave, and would keep you from making Him the king or the boss of your life right now? Great. Well, you know, when I chose to make this decision to follow Jesus, I prayed a prayer very similar to this picture. I just said, God, I'm very sorry for my sin that I left your design. And I want to turn from my way and believe that you came and died on the cross and rose from the grave, and I want to make you my king and be forgiven. Is that a prayer you'd like to pray right now? Excellent. Well, go ahead. God knows your heart. You can say it out loud or you can say it to yourself. So go ahead and turn to your buddy and practice the three circles, starting with the intro line. Has anyone shared the gospel with you? And we'll do a few more reps. We're going to model it and have you practice, model, practice. So go ahead.